Hey, what's up, you guys? This is The Average Gamer, and I'm here to tell you today why Diablo 3 is better than Diablo 4. So the first thing I want to do is put some disclaimers out there so you guys can see where I'm getting my perspective from. I played a druid, best class in the game, right? Haha. And I have about 190 hours played in Diablo 4. I did quit once the first patch released, a whole nother topic we'll get into later on in this video. But that is the perspective I'm coming from. 190 hours on druid, multiple late game nightmare dungeons, and that's really where we're going to start our basis. I also want everyone to understand that I played Diablo 3 back when it came out on PC. Then I played Diablo 3 on PS3 and PS4 as well, all characters to level 70. So I have a lot of time with Diablo 3, and even in the community, I believe that 190 hours is a lot of time in Diablo 4. Probably not for your speedrunners and major YouTube channels, but for a typical gamer, 190 hours is quite some time to develop a good, solid opinion. So that's where I'd like to go ahead and set that argument, let you know who I am, where I'm from. And the first thing that I would like to talk about when it comes to Diablo 3 being better than Diablo 4 is the skill system. I know, you're probably already saying the skill tree, the skill system? No way. That was one of the main shining lights of Diablo 4, right? Diablo 3 can't be better. And this is one of the main things I like to draw your attention to because I think in every facet of the word and your imagination, it is better. So let's go to the wizard, just for an example. You had an ability called Arcane Torrent, right? One of the many abilities. And this is how the skill system was in Diablo 3, right? You could use something called Disruption, which would make targets hit by the Arcane Torrent become disrupted for 6 seconds, causing them to take additional damage. You could change it to Death Blossom, which essentially just made it uncontrollable, where the torrents would just go all over the place in an erratic fashion. You could change it to Arcane Mines, where you didn't even fire missiles anymore, and instead you left Arcane Mines that would like blow up once the enemy went over it. You had something called Power Stone. Every missile had like a 2% chance to leave behind Power Stones that gave you more arcane power. And then finally you had Cascade, where enemies killed by the Arcane Torrent had a 100% chance to fire a new missile at another enemy, dealing 210% weapon damage. And so that's just one. And I want you to know that every single class and every single ability in Diablo 3 had this. Whereas in the new Diablo 4, you have your ability, and then you have two small modifiers that really just add a small thing, extra crit bonus, the chance to possibly attack twice. You know what I'm saying? Nothing serious. You can't augment something so greatly that it feels like a completely different skill. Right? And so in that aspect, I think you're shrinking your overall build diversity because, for example, as I'm using the druid, one of the main abilities that I'm having right now is like this rock thing that I use an ability, it shoots up a rock out of the ground. And the only thing I can do to augment that is where if I stun an enemy, another rock hops up. But in Diablo 3, it would have been maybe a couple of spikes stick out of the ground and impale enemies. Or, instead of raising a rock, you throw a stone spear that explodes on impact. Or call down rocks from the sky that fall on enemies, slowing them as they move. These are just some of the things in Diablo 3 that are consistent across the board, across all classes, that really increase build diversity in comparison to Diablo 4. And I really think there's no argument. My next main problem with Diablo 4 is the actual leveling system itself. So in Diablo 3, you have all these characters, and let's be honest, the early game is a grind in these games. You're really here for the late game if you're a real player of these games. And in Diablo 3, getting all 4 or 5 class characters to level 70 was a realistic achievement that didn't take terribly long. On top of that, there were lots of mods, there were lots of, glitches, there were lots of people who had built, cheating equipment essentially in the game that would let you level up characters quickly. And that's just what it was. Or you would take a low-level character into a high-level nightmare dungeon, leave the guy at the front so that you could level up another character, because at the end of the day, once we level up our characters, we don't want to do the early game grind for another 40 hours. We just want to play another characters in game, because that's where the fun is for a lot of us gamers. And the fact that you can't really do that in Diablo 4, for a multitude of reasons. And then after the first patch, they essentially just canceled your ability to stand in front of the dungeon and have your friends level up your alt character. Just really sucks. And to top all that off, in Diablo 3, when you made a new character, all of your Paragon points were transported to your new character. So you would essentially keep all of your Paragon points. And in Diablo 4, all of your Paragon points stay on the other character and are not transferred. So essentially, not only do you have to level up a full character from level 1 all the way through, but you even have to continue leveling your Paragon points afterwards. I told you guys at the start of this video, I have 190 hours on my Druid, and I'm not even level 100. If that tells you something, then it tells you something. My next point really comes straight off of the whole leveling another character and leveling your alt characters. In Diablo 3, at the end of the game, they had the wardrobe just as in they do in Diablo 4, but in Diablo 4, the wardrobe is simplified to where you can really only change the appearance of your weapons and your armor. In Diablo 3, they had the same thing in the Transmogrify station, but in Diablo 3, at the wardrobe, you could save your build. So whatever armor you had on, as long as it was in your stash, you could literally save your build, do whatever you wanted with all your skill points and your armor, test out a new build, and if you didn't like it, you could go click your saved build in your wardrobe and it would be immediately equipped. Or if you did like it, you could save the other build that you created. In Diablo 4, that's completely gone. Which leads me to my next point. How many times have you been playing even a Diablo-like game with one of your friends or a couple of your buddies? You pick up a weapon on the ground, it's a cool legendary, but you can't use it, but you know your buddy's really been looking for that item, so what do we all do as gamers? We drop it on the ground for our buddy, we trade it to him because that's what we do. We pick up some items, we know we can't use it, we help out our friend, or we keep some stuff in our stash knowing full well that one of our buddies has a class like that, and we're just ready and willing to give him gear that we're not going to use to help his character get up there. In Diablo 4, some genius at the office decided that we aren't allowed to trade legendaries. And I think I speak for all gamers when I say that guy needs to be fired. It's one of the dumbest decisions I think I've ever seen in an RPG that's multiplayer. This next critique may be one of the smaller critiques because this game is mostly PvE and not PvP. But let's keep it honest. If you're going to put a PvP in your game, then you at least need to pay attention to the PvP and do your best to balance it. Why there is not an instance-based matchmaking system when I go to my PvP area so that I'm entered into a lobby essentially with people anywhere between 5 to 10 levels of my character is beyond me. Why it would take a level 63 character and put them in a lobby with level 100 characters who essentially just insta-kill you every single time, giving you no hope and no opportunity to ever earn the currency that's also for that area's loot so that you can take part in that in-game activity is beyond me. You've essentially created an in-game activity that is only for people who play this game 24/7 without jobs, who are able to get their characters to level 100, essentially banning a vast majority of your player base simply because you didn't take the time to make matchmaking in the PvP area. My next complaint comes with gear. Where's the set gear, right? And where's the gear that actually utilizes every skill and every ability in these characters and classes' arsenals? In Diablo 3, no matter how trivial the ability may have seemed, there was a weapon or a set armor piece or some kind of ring, amulet, whatever have you, that really augmented that ability, that lets you summon more characters, that, you know, made your ability have more area of effect, or that completely changed your ability's attribute or even the way that it behaved completely. Quick case in point, in Diablo 3, the Witch Doctor had this one ability, I believe it was called Acid Spray, where a barrel of acid would pour down from the sky. You could have a ring that you would find that would completely change that aspect of that ability to no longer rain acid down from the sky, but to create a circular pool with a dome over it that stayed on the ground for a little bit of time and poisoned enemies. But then on top of that, you could find another ring that allowed you to cast that ability 3 times before the cooldown counted again, completely augmenting that ability from what it used to be on a level never seen in Diablo 4. And can we please talk about the loot goblin? If you've ever played Diablo 3, the loot goblin was an absolute experience, okay? You saw the loot goblin, you chased after him, and 9 times out of 10, you killed the loot goblin, and anywhere between 4 to 8 legendaries would pop out of that loot goblin, even more on higher difficulty levels. I can't tell you how many times I've killed the loot goblin in Diablo 4 and gotten absolutely nothing in return, completely defeating the purpose of one of the favorite things in Diablo 4, fun little Easter egg, the loot goblin, kill him before he jumps into the portal, has been completely drained of its soul and purpose in Diablo 4. And what about Whimsyshire and the cow level? Just great little Easter eggs that would just randomly happen for no reason out of the blue. Or the goblin level, where you came in and it was just slam full of loot goblins, just nonstop. You know, and it's just little Easter eggs like that just don't really exist in Diablo 4. Listen. It's hard to say this to a lot of people because we live in a day and an age where people just accept mediocrity on day one because they know that later on a patch is coming. All I'm saying is this: no matter what video game you loved or you hated or you played in the past, ask yourself a couple of questions. If you played Borderlands 1, when Borderlands 2 came out, did you have to wait for a patch for it to be great? When Skyrim came out after Oblivion, did you have to wait for a patch for it to be great or its content to be as deep as you'd wanted it to be? When the new God of War game came out in the success of God of War 3, did we have to wait for a patch for its greatness? What about Zelda Breath of the Wild? Halo 2 after Halo 1? Persona 5, GTA 5, The Witcher 3? The list literally goes on and on with every great game that came after its predecessor, where the games improved upon system after system while taking everything from the previous games that made them great, instead of leaving so many wonderful things behind like Diablo 4 has done. And the very last thing that I have to leave you with is the patches. Oftentimes, in my mind, you can really tell where a game's direction is headed, where the developer's mindset for the game's future is, and so much more off of your first few patches. And with the latest patch, all we've seen is that Diablo 4 developers think that we should get less experience, less gold, and less rewards for killing more and more difficult monsters that spawn more frequently. It's just insane. And if any future patches have anything in common with the latest patch we've received, then I think that it only bodes worse for Diablo 4 in the future, and may only sap its potential to be one of the greatest RPGs ever and take the trust away from the Blizzard faithful. And that is why I believe, in my honest opinion, that Diablo 3 is better than Diablo 4.